Hi, I'm Tom. Welcome to part 4 of my 31 horror film rundown to Halloween. And we're going to start off with number 12, and it's the Trollenberg Terror. I really enjoyed this film. It's a British black and white sci-fi horror film from the 50s. It's a lot like the Quatermass Experiment in that it's taken very seriously, very intense. They've all been very polite and reserved despite the fact that there's danger all around them and things happening. The alien monsters look a bit ridiculous, it has to be said, but by the time they turn up, you're already hooked. Because it does a really good job of keeping you on the edge of your seat up until then. I enjoyed this film. I'd see it again, definitely. I think in America it's known as The Crawling Eye or something like that. Number 13, Manos Hands of Fate. Now, this is another one I'd never seen before, and my goodness, it's so bad. It's got a cult following, this film, largely because I think some people consider it to be the worst film ever made. Which, people say that about The Room, people say that about Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's one of those films, it's like, oh, it's so bad, how can this exist, I didn't know any of the production history when I watched it, and since then I've been hearing stories about it, and it sounds like such an insane story of the production. Character called Torgo in it, and my friend Adam from Beowulf told me that they gave him these sort of centaur type legs, and they put trousers over them, and presumably at some point in the film he was going to lose his trousers and you're going to see these legs, but they forgot to film that scene, so he's hobbling around on these legs, and apparently it absolutely knackered the actor's legs, ruined them, so he couldn't walk properly again for the rest of his life, and he ended up committing suicide as a result. It didn't record sound at all, so they had to do all the sound afterwards, and the camera or the sound equipment they used only would record for up to 3 minutes and then it would stop. So ineptly made, and it's really difficult to try and explain what actually happens in the film because very little of it makes any sense other than some people get lost, they turn up at a house, there's an evil master who has lots of wives. They have to kill them, sacrifice them to Manos, and the wives don't want to kill them, but some of the wives do, so the wives have a big fight. They get away, but then they recapture them, I think, and then it's just so all over the place. And there's loads of scenes that just seem to repeat themselves, and there's lots of moments of them just standing, reacting to something, not doing anything, and looking awkward, like, am I supposed to be saying something in this scene? You can see in their faces, like, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's like the director just said, oh, just stand there and react. And they've just filmed them for like 2 minutes. Yeah, the acting is atrocious, the directing's terrible. There's nothing good to say about this film, other than that it's perhaps unintentionally funny in places. Number 14, Witchfinder General, and this is one I've seen lots of times, but I just wanted to see it again. I've actually already reviewed Witchfinder General on my channel, so I'll put a link in the description of this video to my review if you want to see it. It's often put up alongside Blood on Satan's Claw and The Wicker Man as being a folk horror film, and the interesting thing about this one, I think, is basically it's a witch story. It's about witches, but the witches aren't real. It's one of the few horror films that actually shows the reality of witch hunting, and they're basically quite sadistic, and they make money and they kill innocent women, and that's what the film is about, and it just shows the reality of it. I think it's very brutal, it's very, very violent, but it looks amazing. It's all filmed in the British countryside. Vincent Price is surprisingly good, considering he's usually quite camp and pompous and usually a bit of a hammy actor. Amazingly restrained in his performance. He manages to be a bit more subtle, which I think he found difficult from what I've heard. I think that the director Michael Reeves didn't want him in the first place, and perhaps wasn't very nice to him, told him you just gotta stop, doing all this overacting. Horrible, but very good. Okay, well that's all for now. See you later for part 5.